Well, folks, of all the scandals we've been seeing in the country over the past few months, certainly the NSA scandal is the biggest. The National Security Agency again. And you know, it's really not even a scandal. It's actually been a way of life for these folks. When it comes to Washington, D.C., there's things that we don't know that we really should know. I think an interesting quote I want to share with you comes from Daniel Ellsberg. And you might remember the name. Daniel's the man who leaked the Pentagon Papers in 1971, yeah? Well, he says, I'm very impressed by what I've heard in the last couple of hours, including Snowden's own video. I think he's done an enormous service, incalculable, actually, Ellsberg says. As for the surveillance program, he goes on to say, I have no doubt that this violates the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution and probably, well, other parts of the Bill of Rights as well, and should have been exposed. So then he asked to me the key question, can it really be a crime to expose crime? Well, that is the question of the day, isn't it? It's Malcolm Out Loud here. Welcome to the show. We have a great show and production for you today. Bob Francis joins us, a technology expert. You've seen him before on the show. We've had him on national radio. MilfordCommunications.com is the website. You'll see more about it. And again, for those of you who've been interacting with us on radio, you know we have white papers that are coming to you to help you yourself, keep yourself secure. And you can register for those at getinvolvedgetloud.com. Put your email address in there. It's all free. You'll get a copy of my ebook as well, Smash, Winning the Game of Life. Follow us on Twitter, at Malcolm Out Loud is where you'll find that. You know all the social media contacts. Good to have you with us. Let's get started on the show. Well, again, my biggest beef here is that Big Brother continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And, of course, we all get smaller and smaller and smaller. And that seems to be the trend going these days. Bob, you remember in high school, or at least I remember in high school. Now, I want to say that. There's a little time difference between us. But listen now.
A lot, yes.
All right, well, hold on. But do you remember reading George Orwell, 1984?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I read it in school, and it was, and I remember it's like, 1984, that's a ways off, man. That's not going to be this all going to happen like that quick? It was in the 70s, And I thought, wow. And, it was the whole dystopian sort of environment, and Uncle Sam was very spooky stuff, man, when you're reading that book the first time. That book they can't even keep in the stores on the shelves right now. The numbers have skyrocketed. I wish I had stock in the program and the book. It's like risen. Last number I knew was about 8,000%. It was like, yes, everybody wants to read that book. I guess that's the first telltale sign that we're kind of in a spiral here, huh?
I believe so. I think, unfortunately, there have been other telltale signs, but nothing like what we're seeing just in the last few days.
Okay. Edward Snowden.
Yes.
Your opinion out of the gate. I mean, is he a hero? Is he a traitor? Is he somewhere in between, please?
Well, I think he's morphed. When he started out, in my opinion, he was a hero. He was bringing to light illegal activities of our government. Unfortunately, he has morphed into a traitor by threatening to sell our secrets to the Chinese.
Well, he hasn't said that, though.
No, others have.
Yeah, that's right. So I want to be careful. He did not say that.
No.
In fact, he's come out and defiantly said, absolutely not. He said if he was going to do that, he would have flown into Beijing, is what he said. So I don't know that that's the case, although I do sort of agree a bit with what you just said. I also believe that he was a hero initially in many ways and aspects to do this very difficult thing. We've heard his father speak about this now on media. His dad came out and said, hey, man, I don't know what's going on here, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing is, a lot of these cats get a little smug is what happens. And I think what's happening right now, what worries me, I think, Bob, he may be talking to the wrong people. The media, the Guardian, the people around him, they want more of this. They're at center stage. Come on, give me more. It's like you came into me. If Edward Snowden came in here, I'd be all over it. I'd say, yeah, let's go for Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, Chapter 5. We'd keep him hidden in the back room. We wouldn't tell anybody where he is. And to say, be honest.
Sure.
But my point is obvious, that I think that, he seems to be, the conversation, I think he is treading a little water at this point. I think the conversation is changing a little bit. he's starting to get, I don't know, I'm a little worried at this point with some of the conversations happening. He had an open press conference with The Guardian. You see that?
Saw that, yes.
And it's like others said, if it really was about informing Americans, he's done that.
Yes.
And I think at this point he needs to step off the gas and shut the hell up.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if he goes much further, he will be trapped into the spiral of giving too much. And that's what will really cast him as a traitor.
I think he may be headed. He's got to be careful here. Again, I think Edward, call me and I'll tell you what to do here, buddy. But you're in the wrong. I don't agree with giving information away. I don't believe the traitor program. I'm as Americans, and I'm with you. I think enough is enough at this point. I think you've exposed them now for who they are. The biggest problem I'm seeing with everybody, I want to address right here, is that it's not so much that nobody really knew what the NSA was doing or how or what, but I think what's really, really pissing people off, Bob, is the fact that they tried to keep it a secret.
Absolutely. You see, this is the problem. When the NSA comes at you with one of these secret orders from this secret court, you're required to keep it secret.
They couldn't say anything. So I know I was a little pissed at first with Google, Facebook, AOL, all these companies, Apple, all of them were giving it, but they had no choice.
That's right.
They come in with guns. Yeah. Now, you will
keep
fess up, and am I right? They have to sign. Yeah. Now, some of these companies from reports were really trying to not give the information forward, and they were giving them a hard time, but none of it was reported in the media. It was kept very hush-hush. But what's really upsetting people right now across radio that I'm seeing around this country is people just feel betrayed in this country. So people are asking, why didn't you say this? Why didn't somebody expose some part of this?
Sure.
Why wasn't there some discussion from the White House in some administration? So, listen, this is what we're doing, folks. We got cables underneath the ocean. We're sending all this information through so we can spot keywords in terrorism. Yeah. Right?
Should have said so. Don't treat the people of the United States as if we're idiots.
Right.
And this is what has been happening. And in my experience, so often, governments, our government in particular, classifies information more so to keep it away from the American people than to keep it away from the enemy. The enemy already knows this. They already know what we're doing.
Well, it's like our allies. They know we're spying. Come on, they know we're spying on them.
Absolutely.
It's like Chancellor Angela Merkel comes out and she's like shocked and horrified. She's going to talk to. She's talked to Obama at the G8 summit and said, bad boy. I mean, come on. This is just public stupidity.
Absolutely.
She knows what they're doing. They're all doing it.
But she took a chance to use the opportunity to get a little publicity at his benefit, against him, yes.
Yeah, I think that's what they're doing.
Sure.
I think they're all on the gravy train trying to pick that up. So, all right, so the constitutionality of this, first of all. I've had conversation with folks. In fact, you and I did a national radio show last week, okay? Yep. And I asked you about the constitutionality. We had another gentleman on who was well-versed in this and so on and so forth. And you had mentioned that you believed that not using the data, but the fact of grabbing all that data and information was not a violation of our Constitution. I did not agree with you then so much, and I did not agree with the other gentleman about that. I do believe it's in violation of our Constitution. I do not think the federal government has the right, the prerogative to go in and grab all this without us knowing, and this information is being taken without my permission. My email stuff, my web history, all my data. Yeah. What right do they have, Bob? What right?
Well, I think there's a fine line between collecting the data and using the data. I mean, in the process, what they're doing, of course, is they're gathering everything and they're storing it.
Right.
So that in the future...
So if I'm a bad boy...
That's right. In the future, years perhaps, if they get a summons, if you get a summons, a warrant, or a court order, they can then go back and then they can read the information. Now, legally, that's the way it's supposed to work.
Like, for instance, if I'm talking to someone in Pakistan or somebody in Europe, that's what they're tracking, right? And then they see that, and then they can say, okay, what words is he saying? He's not talking about, a mayonnaise company here. He's talking about,
No, that's right.
nuclear activity. Well, I do that every day, and I talk to people in Europe. I talk to people in Pakistan. Yep. We have people on the show. They've got to be following everything I'm saying.
Yes, and keep in mind that calls outside the United States or that border conversations are always recorded. According to industry reports, a software program reads those messages looking for certain words.
Right.
And if those words are found, that message is then set aside electronically for further investigation. It may be a computer investigation or it may be a person. So those conversations are not the same as the conversations you and I have inside the United States.
Tell folks what metadata is.
Metadata is just the extra data that is stored with a record that talks about who placed the call, who received the call, what time was it, where are they. It's not the content.
Okay.
It's just the communications data about the setup of the call.
All right, and in all of this, this whole process of them doing this is really a term I think we would call data mining.
Sure.
Yeah, it's data mining. It's actually what companies like to do.
Yeah.
They can data mine. It's like when you shop at a certain store or do a certain thing or whatever. You know how those ads keep popping up that
You've been data mined.
Oh man, it look like we're all looking for blue-haired people who like horses, and all of a sudden your picture's coming up all the time, right?
Yep.
Taxes, whatever. It's all that way, and that's really what they're doing is collecting all this data.
They're doing that for sure, and they admit that. There are others who say, but they are also collecting all of the content as well.
Right.
In fact, there have been reports in the press in the last couple of days that have said that even Obama, last Friday, for example, admitted that they're also collecting the content of your communications.
Right. Right, and there is talk about this. We don't really know. They haven't shared a lot with us yet, so we don't really know, Bob. All right, so what I want to tell folks is Bob has been working on, and we talked about it on radio this past week. Again, if you've listened to that, you know, a series of white papers, okay? And these are going to be on voice
communications,
data, and web?
Email and web.
Email and web, yeah. Voice, email, and web,
That's
which
correct.
is your data points, yeah. And there's going to be 3 white papers, and these are available to you at no cost, what have you, for our platform, our audience. And you go to getinvolvedgetloud.com. You've heard it on national radio as well, and you put your email address in there. You'll get a copy of my ebook as well, Smash Winning the Game of Life, and you get the white papers that Bob and I are talking about. So I'm going to talk, and I want to just mention that now to you because we're going to talk more about that in the next segment, about the white paper, so I don't want to lose focus of that, Bob, because I think people want to know how to protect themselves. And I want to talk specifics about it. I want to spend 10 minutes with you talking about this, which you know a hell of a lot more than I know about that. So that's what I want to talk about. But I want to stay where we're at for the moment. And I don't use this next term lightly that I want to talk about, but I do want to use it in a sense, Bob, to ask you. And I'm not being a smart guy, and this isn't, but I'm really, if you stop right now at where we are right now in the juncture of our country, okay? We're a country that is less than 250 years old. Technology has busted loose over the last 15 years, okay? We've made more progress of telecommunications and opened up the conversation now than thousands of years, okay? Here we are now. We see all the signs coming with the Supreme Court ruling on this and ruling on that. And I'm talking to you folks all the time about your liberties and your freedoms and your rights and, blah, blah, blah. So here's the thing. We hear the words police state. I don't know if people really understand what I'm talking about. So I want to come back to you in just a moment here. And I'm not being funny here. I just want to talk to you a moment about this. Let me give you the scientific definition, please, of a police state. It's not my words. Look it up. This is what you'll find. A police state is a state in which the government exercises rigid and repressive controls over the social, economic, and political life of the population. Now, stop there. The economic part of the population has already happened as far as I'm concerned. They've already taken control of that. The bailouts of all the big business operations, trying to hold industries up. You see where I'm at now? Absolutely. They've already done that, Bob. Yeah. They're already doing it. They weren't supposed to be in any of that stuff, buying out companies, doing all kinds of things. They're already doing it, So that part to me is already golden at this point, let alone the fact that they've got their hands in our wallet so far we can't even see straight anymore. So we got that part of it. Now you come back to the social and the political. Now we bring it back to the NSA, the FBI, the CIA, all of this, the BQY, and you take a look at all these government acronyms, and it's a disease that's forming around you by the moment. It's sort of, you get the hives when you start hearing this. It's like you go into convulsions. All right, so this police state business. I believe you take George Orwell, 1984, where I started. You take the conversation of, we talked about Edward Snowden already. He's not the problem here, kids. The problem is where the federal government is and what we're accepting and allowing them to do to us, okay? Right. And a piece of paper called the Constitution. It's a small little document, but it really is the backbone of this country. The country doesn't exist without it. So you take that forward now. Bob, I got to tell you, I mean, I'm an optimist. I see things in a very good light. I'm not a, the sky is falling kind of guy. I don't wake up in the morning and believe the sky is falling, okay? But I got to tell you, I think the sky may be falling. And, this police state stuff has me a little worried.
Absolutely, and especially if you know what is being done that's not being told, and then you add on top of that what you already know, then you begin to ask yourself questions, well, what if they did the following? Because we know they're collecting the data. We know that they're building a huge national police force. For example, why would Homeland Security buy 2,700 tanks for use in the United States? Beats me. We know that they're forcing communication companies to provide all of the information and saying that, well, we really don't do anything but look at just the stuff that is approved by courts, et cetera, et cetera. And then people like Snowden come out and say, and that's not really true. I can sit here and I can read the president's email if I want to. So, all in all, I think there's a huge problem in the United States that we are, in fact, on the verge of a police state. It's scary to think. It's scary to think.
Well, it's scary to think because we didn't think we'd see it, certainly in our lifetimes or even the next lifetime after us. I mean, we can't really control what's going to happen 3-4 generations from now. One of the things that Snowden came out and he said that he was very concerned about us selling out the next generation. Yeah. And I've watched that 12-minute piece on YouTube many times, and I've written my notes. I see what's going on. Back to what you're talking about with the tanks. Who bought those? The
Homeland Security.
Homeland Security, folks. Yeah, and. Back to what this Julie, when we talk about the polls ahead and we talk about what Julie asked, we Americans of like mind need to link up somehow, some way. What she's talking about is a public showing.
Sure.
What we're seeing around the world right now in various countries. Bob, do you see that as a possibility in this country at this time?
Not at this time, because I think so many people don't yet agree that we're to that point. Okay. A lot of people understand that we are, but the majority, as you've shown in the polls, the majority of the people really are not quite there yet.
Right. Well, Snowden said, to wrap that up, I want to see what he said. The public is owed an explanation of the motivations behind the people that make these disclosures that are outside of the democratic model. Okay? He goes on to say, when you are subverting the power of government, that is a fundamentally dangerous thing to democracy. That's bottom line.
Yep.
Okay? And to me, that is a hell of a mission, isn't it?
It is.
And that's sort of where we're at this point. Okay. So the question now becomes, folks, what can you do to help yourself? How do you protect yourself? Now, listen, I'm not just talking against the federal government, although I certainly have them on my list here, I have to tell you. But I'm talking about nasty people, evil people, hackers, criminal-type people. Not to mention the Chinese and Russians are after everybody also these days, which is what I've aptly named the white papers that Bob and I are putting out here. So in any event, I want to talk more about that and things you can do in your life to help yourself out, help your cause out, and protect yourself. And hopefully at the end of the day, you help your country out because, again, we got to take it back, right? One moment or not. We'll take a break. Bob Francis will be back with you in just a moment.
Malcolm Out Loud is brought to you by Zillergy. Email marketing campaigns, social media tools, and text messaging. Visit Zillergy.com and use promo code OUTLOUD for special pricing.
Remember, every tax problem does have a solution.
All right, so I want to talk to you about the polls next. And let me tell you what, folks, the polls are all over the place. I mean, every day I'm looking, and one says this way, one says that way. What do Americans really think of this NSA business? We know what the allies think, and we know what other people think, but what do Americans really think about this, and is this going to be acceptable behavior? Well, here's what I did. We're on one of the big shows this past week, Coast to Coast, on radio on Saturday. Everybody knows Coast to Coast. And I put a poll out there, okay? And, Bob, I put the poll out there that said, very simply, should government be trusted with your personal phone, email, and web records, okay? Very simple. If no, click like below in the poll. If yes, then leave a quick comment. That's the only way you can do that when you're doing these Facebook, LinkedIn sort of polls, okay? So put it out there, and here's what the facts were. Here's the results of this poll, and many of you that are watching that were part of this poll. 185 people said no, absolutely not. Keep government out of our business, kind of thing. We don't want them doing this. 2 said they're okay with it, yes, and 1 was completely undecided. Kind of an I don't know kind of thing. That surprise you?
Not at all. I think that most Americans are tired of the fruitless efforts to keep their identity and their personal information private, and no one can trust the government.
Right. We're going to talk more about all of this, of course, because, when you say that, it's trying to strike this balance out, Bob. One of the things I'm seeing in the national conversations that are going on is, how do we have this balance of protecting us? There are many people who believe the government is using this as an excuse. Anytime the word terror comes up, or terrorism, it means they can jump in our wallets and jump in our lives. Oh, there's terror. Next thing I know, they're all over it. You find that too?
Absolutely, yeah. That's become the big catch-all. So if you want to do something, blame it on terror.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how they get away with all this stuff. And
Absolutely.
this goes back to, a lot of it's back to 9/11 stuff.
That's right.
Before 9/11, the FBI and the CIA and the FTQ and the BYZ, none of them talked together. Then none of them spoke.
That's right.
Remember, that was the big problem, and nobody knew that, the planes were coming, supposedly, right? Now, it's like they're all communicated, and they're now talking and linked. Combine that with all of the other things we're seeing from the NSA, and basically, and now you get the Supreme Court saying, all right, kids, we can do a cotton swab and take your DNA even if you're not guilty. Hello? Mm-hmm. Guess what that is?
Sure. Well, they're equating it to a fingerprint. They're saying it's just another form of identification, which it is.
Right.
But on the other hand, we do know that Obama in particular, the government today, is trying to create a huge master database that has every piece of information known by all of the agencies in a single place. Right. Today I notice there's a big push to get my health records in that database. Yeah. Scares me.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people are scared of that Obamacare thing. But back to the poll here a moment, folks. Okay, so let me tell you, I want to share a few comments with you that some of you wrote in about on these. And even though I said leave a comment only if it was yes, many people couldn't help themselves. So they'd put, no, Malcolm, and then I still got to leave a comment. So here are some of them I think you'll find interesting. I want to first share a couple of the yeses. One gentleman, Jason, says, newsflash, the NSA has been doing this type of stuff forever. Okay? Yep. If you're not a terrorist, you should have nothing to worry about. Legally, the information found through these means is null and void unless you're involved in terrorist activities. Furthermore, what did you think technology was all about? Welcome to reality. And you say?
Well, he's absolutely correct. The NSA has been gathering this kind of information for many years. We talked before about a program going way back into the 60s and 70s called Echelon. And by the way, it was based outside the United States with cooperation of our friends in Australia and in England and a lot of other places.
Right.
So yes, that information has always been collected and available. The question is, who's looking at it? And we know that electronic systems were created to electronically locate. There aren't enough people.
Yeah, I don't agree with this stuff, though, where he says you have nothing to worry about because, if you're not a terrorist. I don't agree with that at all.
I don't agree with it at all. Yeah, that's exactly because, as we see in the Snowden thing, as he claims, and I believe it to be true, anyone who wants to can look at anything.
And then go back in time.
Absolutely.
And as far as I'm concerned, that's a problem. Steve says, the ugly truth Republicans want to avoid. Bush started the wiretap program.
No, the wiretaps started well before Bush.
Yeah.
In fact, even which Bush? Yeah. They started a long time ago.
Yeah, I know they did. It was just after George Washington, wasn't it? So Chris says, it's complicated, though. I'd trust the omniscient, omnipotent entity, God, with such information. I do not think government should play that role, but it has come to provide similar comfort in recent days, so I don't know.
Well, so that's too bad. He should know. The issue is, of course, if you look at history, tyrants who have collected this kind of information have used it to subjugate their constituents. And that is the danger that many of us have as we look at what's going on today.
All right. A few other finishing comments, and then we'll get to the rest of the polls and the information for you folks. Interesting that James says, you attack Facebook, Malcolm, for turning over information to the NSA, yet you create a page on Facebook and encourage others to post there.
Yeah, right.
I think, well, my point back to James is you basically have to be a hermit and not communicate with it if you don't interact. So, I mean, obviously, the guy's being smart with me, but I understand, James. I get it. Tim says, shouldn't the government be protecting Americans' information from theft rather than stealing and hoarding it?
Well, you would like to think that would be one of the roles that government could play, is to protect us. And in fact, that's the reason we have a military, is to protect our homeland, etc. Unfortunately, as life is today, that's not a fact. The facts are that the information is being collected to use against us.
That's right. And if you believe that that's not the case, I have some fresh tulips to give you. It's grown right outside the door here on the cement floor. So PF says, no way, Jose. We're not headed into fascism. We've arrived already. Kyle says we should get their emails and web records if they have ours, an eye for an eye. Yeah. Well, the Freedom of Information Act is supposed to give us all that.
Well, and that's a good point.
We're not getting it, though.
We're not getting it. Well, we don't know. We know that we're getting a lot of information from overseas.
Right. Yeah, but we're not getting. I mean, we're supposed to be entitled to see all this stuff, and no, this is the way it is. But it's not happening. Yeah. These people are doing everything behind closed doors, and you know it. You're all on the dime here. I see those here. Julie says we Americans of like mind need to link up somehow. I like this, Julie. Some way in one place so that we know how many we are in number. Is there already such a place that anyone knows of? Perhaps I should ask the NSA. Well, Julie, this is actually a point, Bob. This is what's happening around the world. And back to, Julie, your point, what's happening is people are using around the world social media as a tool and communications tools, Bob. I've reported on this on our production here, and they're using these tools to meet. It's happening right now in Turkey. Sure. Turkey Prime Minister came out and said, hey, wait a minute, this social media stuff's for the birds. Well, it is when you're taking your country to Islam and the people don't want it.
Yep.
You bet it's for the birds.
Sure.
Then you want to disconnect the plugs quickly. So listen, we're seeing this everywhere, absolutely everywhere. So, Cheryl says the government is too big and out for themselves instead of representing the people. We need to clean house and fix our infrastructure back to the Constitution. Jag says, I know all you wanted me to do was click like, but I can't, Malcolm. No, my answer is no, but this is the most corrupt administration of my lifetime. I'm 70 and remember Nixon's administration so clearly, but they were Cub Scouts compared to this administration. You know what, Jag? I agree with you 100%. He's exactly right, and I've talked about that on national radio. Nixon did nothing compared to this program, and this guy's still walking around. Somebody will throw his ass out of the office, I'll tell you. Anyways, they went on to call them Marxists, Muslim sympathizers, and on and on. There's some pretty wicked comments.
Yeah.
You're not surprised?
Not at all. Not at all. Hear them every day, see them in the press.
Yeah.
Surprisingly.
Yeah. Well, the other thing to wrap up this poll business here, Bob, is what I'm seeing so far is most Americans do find it unacceptable for the NSA to collect the phone records of millions of U.S. citizens, some of the earlier polls have said. And 62% of voters say the government secretly collecting the phone records of millions of Americans is unacceptable behavior and alarming invasion of privacy rights. Now, USA Today just came out with a poll in the last day or so that says more that Americans are comfortable with this. So you're seeing a lot of swing, depending on who comes out with this poll, whether it's New York Times, USA, or Fox, or what have you. Obviously, we've got a divided group here as to what's acceptable. But I think, Bob, that the pendulum can swing pretty fast and hard. I'm going to say to you this. If something happens in our country, if there's another, I really believe this, if there's a terrorist act in the weeks ahead, or anything at all that happens in these next few months, I'm going to show you how far that pendulum swings back. And they're going to say, people are going to say, okay, government, you can come and see whatever it is.
Right.
Am I right?
You're right. No, you're right.
And I think that's a problem. But that's because they're willing to throw our liberties. I think they're ready to step on our Constitution. I think Americans will do this.
Yes.
And you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I see it coming. Yeah.
It's unfortunate but true.
And we're headed in a bad direction. None of this is going to solve our problems anyways. Polls are polls, obviously, folks. They swing one way or another. That's the key. But anyways, we're going to leave it right there, and we're going to be back with you in just a moment.
Malcolm Out Loud is brought to you by Zillergy. Email marketing campaigns, social media tools, and text messaging. Visit Zillergy.com and use promo code OUTLOUD for special pricing.
Remember, every tax problem does have a solution.
So now that you know the problems, you know where the issues are, we talked about the polls. So let's talk a little bit about what you can do to help yourself and how you can protect yourself. And I'm not just talking about, folks from government, although I think we all should be a little more informed here. Okay, I'm not being a smart guy here. But I'm talking even hackers and people who try to get in, this malicious sort of activity out there. Don't take for granted, but even a lot of foreign countries now are snooping in our business here in the States here, and they're coming right into emails and stuff, right, Bob?
Absolutely. The Chinese have stolen a lot of our technology from the government and from government contractors. They're building great airplanes these days.
And aircraft carriers and all kinds of stuff,
Absolutely.
and stealth bombers and God
Sure.
knows what else. And,
Right.
So there's no doubt about it. All right, so we've created here at this point 3 white papers we're going to play off of here, Mom. We're going to talk about, we won't do the whole episode today, but Bob will be back again. We'll talk about these things. But I do want to give a rough, good 101 overview case of this, because the white paper, again, you want the white papers, folks. GetInvolvedGetLoud.com. Very simple. And you plug your email address in. You'll get my ebook, Smash Winning the Game of Life, and the white papers. There's no cost for any of it. It's just stuff that we appreciate you being here. Mm-hmm. And so let's talk about the voice thing first, okay?
Sure.
Tell me, first of all, what's the problem?
Well, first of all, if you go back in time to telephone communications, in the past, you would pick up your handset and a switch someplace would listen to the dial digits and they would connect me to you. So over time, of course, the networks expanded and et cetera. So the government said, well, I want to know when Bob calls Malcolm, and I want to know what they say. But there's 2 ways of doing it. If it's just the 2 of us, they can listen to my conversation from my phone or yours from your phone. And then they said, well, wait a minute. If I put my sensing device at the central office, I can listen to those 2 calls and to anyone else that they talk to. So that's the problem, is that years ago, under a law called CALEA,
right.
Communications Assistance to Law Enforcement, the telephone companies were required to put taps in their central offices to allow the government to go in and listen to calls ostensibly with a warrant. We don't know whether they had them all the time or not, but the tap was always there, it was always live, and anyone on the other end could, if they wanted to.
That's back in the Ma Bell days.
Exactly.
And that's when we used to hear that on television programs and stuff about tapping the phones and all that.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So that is very seldom used today because in today's environment we've now gone digital. So now the new digital exchanges make it a bit more difficult for tapping because the conversation is not just as the human ear hears it, we call it analog, but it's just a stream of ones and zeros. So now the government has had to do something different. They now put a tap in, but they have to have a computer on that tap to be able to make sense of all these ones and zeros that are running past.
Okay.
So that's the new version of the system that has been in operation now since actually before 9/11. And that gives the government, specifically the NSA and the FBI in our country and other countries as well, the ability to take all of the conversations that are going past at any time, sort them out by looking at the metadata, if you will, who's calling who, and then they can go down and, if they want to, they can record the content of that message. So what we're trying to do at this point is to make it difficult to do that. One of the things that we're doing these days that helps that is we're going to a technology called voice over IP.
VoIP.
VoIP.
Know it very well. I've used it for years. Is it good or bad?
It's very good. In
Okay.
fact, even the carriers today are switching their networks over to voice over IP, and they're using what's called the Internet Protocol. It's much more efficient. Problem, and that is that not all VoIP systems, not all VoIP systems, route all of the calls to a central point. Now, if they do, and some do, Vonage as an example does, then if you want to tap a Vonage call, you can go to a single point. However, other systems, such as Skype, do not have a central point. They do have a point that sets up the call. So you can get the metadata off of a Skype call because if I want to place a call to you, I send a message to the server sends you a message that says you two need to talk, and here's how to do it. Okay. Sets up a communications. We talk to each other, no one else is connected.
Okay.
Now, that makes it quite difficult. So the government's been trying for some time to force Microsoft, now the owner of Skype, to add that.
Because they can't track that.
That's
Just
right.
like with Apple, they can't track iMessage and they can't track something else.
Yeah, that's the advantage, and we get down to the data and email sections. That's the advantage for them. They don't have a central point. That's the issue.
Okay.
So I guess my suggestion is the following: 2 ways. You can either use Skype or a system like it. Yahoo has a system. Others are coming along, which does not have a central server, and therefore I'm not certain it's absolutely 100% private. They may have a way of doing it, but it's for sure going to be more difficult.
Yes, that's a great point. And we don't even know what they can and can't do at
That's
this
right.
point, so for real. But you're saying, I get it now. So, okay, so Skype may be one of but not everybody uses Skype, of course.
Yep, that's true, but there are other systems coming along.
Okay.
And you want to watch when you select one, you want to pick one that does not use the model that has a central server.
So, Bob, if you're using VoIP in your business environment, Voice over Internet Protocol, it is, VoIP, folks, and it's been out for a while now. It's not a new thing, and it's very much perfected now. Are we saying VoIP as a whole is harder to follow?
Yes, it is.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's harder
All right.
always.
Okay.
However, if it goes through a central server, it's less difficult than if it's Skype that does not.
Okay.
For example, I'm a user of Verizon voice service, and it comes in on my Fios connection.
Okay.
So they have switched me so that I'm now using VoIP over Fios.
Okay.
So my fiber connection is it goes back to the central office, and so is my voice.
Okay.
So that says that if they wanted to, they could go to that central office and get that data.
VoIP over Fios. Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
All right. So beyond that, is there anything else voice-wise people should do, Bob?
Well, they can do, and it's a little bit complicated, but you see it on the TV shows like CSI, etc. And that is, you can use what's called a burner phone or a cell phone that you buy with cash, and you don't have to register any personal information. So when you make a call,
Oh, I see.
so
One of these, you mean these cash and carry phones?
Exactly.
Is that what you're speaking about?
Sure. Yeah.
Those came out a lot of times where people couldn't afford phones
Exactly.
or
They're
deposits
the prepaid.
yeah, prepaid phones. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see.
So you buy a prepaid phone.
You don't need to register. I didn't know how that worked. I never did one.
You walk in
Oh, I
with
see.
cash. You buy a phone, and you buy minutes.
So that's what the terrorists are using, obviously.
Absolutely.
They're not using Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile. They're using the cash and carry phones. Cool.
Now, here's the issue. If I buy one and call you,
Right.
guess what? They know because they're listening to you.
To me, so you both have to have it.
You both
so the
have to
terrorists
have
are doing
it.
it. They're all using. So they're both
Oh,
sides are
yeah.
using it. So in the future, if you and I want to really go off the signal, we'd use
That's
those
right.
cash and carry phones and talk. And maybe I need to start using those with radio signals. I'm not going to hide. Go ahead, Bob.
But anyhow, those are at this point the two best ways. Now,
They know I'm after 'em.
New technologies are coming along very soon on your smartphone, especially on the Android and the
iPhone?
the one from Canada.
No, I don't know.
They're going to have an app that allows you to do voice over IP and then put it on a data channel instead of the voice channel in your cell phone.
Yes, I've been hearing about that.
Now, when you do that, you can then encrypt that entire conversation.
Because they're putting it in data. I've been hearing more
That's
about
right.
that. That's supposed to become more frequent. I'd like to see an app that says, that would be very sensational, that when there's a call that they know it's being monitored, it says, "We see you," back to the NSA or the government. That'd be real cool.
It would be cool. Unfortunately, the law, when they passed the Khalil law, two of the stipulations were, number one, you couldn't degrade the quality of the conversation, and number two, you couldn't detect it.
Yeah.
So those were built into the law when they said you've got to do the tap.
Yeah.
But I think seriously in the future, and I'm looking into it personally, there are going to be apps that I can use on my Android phone that will allow me to place calls to other people, not on Skype.
Okay.
Not because...
Well, you're seeing it now. They're using the data lines. So what you're saying is, once you take your voice over data lines, it changes the rules a little bit.
Absolutely
at this
right.
moment. But we're not positive that they have something to...
No, we are, because if we do that, we can now do our own data encryption. That means
Okay.
I have a key,
Okay.
share it with you, and we are the only two that have it.
Okay.
So no matter where that call goes in the internet,
Okay.
people can see the ones and zeros, but they have no clue what it is.
Okay. All right. So that's the things you can do with voice.
And that's what I'm looking forward to in the future, frankly.
Yeah. Now, the white paper you'll do will address all kinds of
Yes,
things.
and it's
I
going to
believe.
have some examples of those kinds of services.
Yeah.
They're that close.
Yeah, yeah. And without getting into it now for time, are there other, I mean, I don't know, I'm asking, are there other points of things that we need to talk about in voice that should be in the white paper?
Those are the main ones, and there are some other things. Keep in mind, for example, that on your voicemail,
Yeah.
that's always stored on a server. It's always accessible to
That's
anyone.
right. Yeah.
So
That's why I don't leave voicemail.
Yeah, voicemails.
I don't like it.
Yeah, it's a guarantee.
Well, yeah, I don't like it because I just think it's a little dangerous anyways. Yeah, I just prefer to talk to somebody. I don't know.
Yeah.
Leaving all that voicemail stuff and,
Well,
whatever.
that's a good point, but that is something to be concerned about. If you leave a voicemail, it can be tapped, it will be stored, and it can be retrieved at.
Well, that's a good point. Don't leave voicemail, folks. A lot of times you leave voicemail, and don't leave me voicemail because I ain't listening to you. I got to tell you right now, you call and leave voicemail, so I go to sleep real quick there. Fast forward through the conversation. I'd like to get to the end result. Well, Bob's going to have a white paper on this. Again, get involved, getloud.com we're going to have. Let me tell you first with Bob. I want to tell you also so you can find more about Bob. MilfordCommunications.com is more that you'll find out about Bob and the company he's in and the things that he's done. You find out more there. But again, in the white paper as well, you can register for that at getinvolvedgetloud.com. There's going to be a series of 3 of these. Bob and I will talk again ahead about more of the data stuff, about the web and the email stuff,
Sure.
Bob. We'll get more into that stuff at another time. There's a lot more. This NSA thing is not going to go away. It's taken not only the country by storm, but it's taken the world by storm, and everybody is quite concerned because of the shift that's been happening in technology, Bob. And I think we're going to see more and more build on this. The key is, Bob, that I want to be able to give this information out to folks, keep them in tune. You're a wealth of information. The best thing we can do is help you by giving some of the stuff to you and some of the other stuff that I want to really understand more about is the email, the web, the data, how to protect ourselves there. That's the stuff you really, because you put all this stuff in emails. You got to be careful what you're writing out there, folks. Just like in social media. You put that stuff out in social media, and the next thing you know, it'll come back to haunt you. Be some career, some job change, something else you're doing in your life, or, God forbid, your wife reads it. Then you know you're in trouble, man. Well, listen, thanks for joining me. It's Malcolm Out Loud. Remember, get involved, get loud.